and welcome to Flip of the Week. Today is part 2 of dynamic and volume level study on the drum set. And what I want to address today are more, musical applications for dynamics. Certain things that I found are different from style to style. They're not totally set in stone rules, but they're general guidelines that I feel to play in different styles. It's important just to understand them and try to work on them. And just as hopefully you've all been working on your dynamics and your interplay between your instruments, you can find that these are more musical and fun applications you can use all your dynamics in. So when you're playing, let's say a rock groove, I think it's cool to try to really have the kick drum and snare drum really loud, but the hi-hat doesn't always have to be loud. So what I suggest to do is to try to play everything pretty loud, pretty ballsy, and then pull back on just the hi-hat. And then you'll see what I mean. This is like a rock groove, and it'll just give it more of an edge. Okay, now another thing that I discovered in playing rock drumming is that sometimes certain different notes have to really stick out, but other ones don't. They kind of go in between each other. So I was doing a recording once with a rock band called Surefire, and we're doing like a rock track at a really basic boof boff type of pattern. But the producer, who did a lot of programming, he mentioned that he wanted to have not necessarily like a drum machine part, but he wanted to have the emphasis of what a drum machine would give, which I translated that as all the notes, when they were played, had to be loud. But that didn't mean that everything was loud when they're struck together, because that was the problem. If I hit the hi-hat and the snare loud, and then I hit the hi-hat by itself, it just wasn't as loud because there was only one instrument being played. So what I came up with was kind of like, I guess you'd call it like a self-compression type of element. Compression being when the sound of a beat or something, or a recording, they push the volume of the highs up and the lows low, and they make it compress. They kind of squash it. So I tried to do that on the drum set, and this was the beat, where basically instead of just playing the beat without any of the accent spots, anywhere where I wasn't playing the snare or the bass drum with the hi-hat, I made the hi-hat louder. But whenever I was playing the snare or the bass drum, the hi-hat was softer. So this is the beat without the hi-hat dynamic changes. Pretty boring, pretty lame. But as I started to try this idea where I pushed the hi-hat notes louder in between the spots where the snare and bass drum were, it created this kind of vibe. That gave it a lot more of like a dynamic, I guess you could call it, wave. But also it was a very strong kind of pulse that it had going, because the hi-hat you see is going like this, but the overall groove, every note that was being played was loud, but it was never unison volume, where the hi-hat and the snare were together, both really loud, and that sort of thing. So that kind of worked out really well. Now another style that dynamics are really cool is funk music, because a lot of times in funk music there's all really quiet snare drum notes, but the backbeat still has to really be happening. So I'm going to play kind of a funky beat like that, and you'll see how the snare drum notes kind of fit in between. Now, if you notice, also the hi-hat has kind of a dynamic thing going on, where I'm giving like a push-pull thing. I'm trying to accent the quarter notes. I'm playing eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but I'm playing accents in 1, 2, 3, 4. and then I'm putting the ghost notes also underneath that like this. So that's some dynamic ideas for funk music. All right, now another one is a two-feel beat. A two-feel can also be like a country groove or a train groove. This is really common in a lot of country or blues tunes, where basically it's like playing straight 16th notes on the snare drum, but the accent has to be in 2 and 4, so it gives it more of like a forward motion because it's got all this action, but it also still has a backbeat, so you can kind of landmark where the actual rhythm is. If it was just straight, it'd sound like, you know, an exercise, a warm-up exercise, you know. Really boring. But if I get quieter notes happening and I make the 2 and 4 louder, all of a sudden it sounds kind of like a train moving, and also hopefully we'll still keep a backbeat so people can dance to it like this. That's all 16th notes on the snare drum, but I'm accenting 2 and 4 to give the backbeat, and also putting a couple little notes in there, you know, to kind of spice it up. And the last one I'll talk about is a shuffle. Shuffles are really common with blues, some jazz, that sort of thing. And the cool thing about a shuffle is that you can really get a lot of movement in your hands because everything's kind of playing together. However, it's important to note that a lot of the accenting is what makes it work. Even though all my hands are playing together, I want to make sure that my 2 and 4 is loud, my bass drum on 1 is really prominent, and also the sound of the cymbal is nice and even. So I'll play it on the hi-hat and then over to the ride, and just check out that my hands are not playing all the same dynamic level. They're both going dun da 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 in a triplet fashion, but I really want to make them feel like they're in peaks and valleys, like the 2 and 4 is really, really prominent, and the other notes are kind of more whispered in the snare, but the hi-hat has a good amount of movement to it, and the bass drum's really like pounding away quarter notes so that the low end is being covered as well. So you can see you can make a lot of sound happen, but you don't have to be bashing away every single note. And personally, I love to play with more complexity to a groove and just keep that groove happening, because that's what keeps the other musicians really happy. You know, they feel like there's a blanket of sound and rhythm that's happening that just keeps them moving. People are dancing, but as a drummer, I can keep myself kind of entertained by just noting that, you know, the 2 and 4 is nice and prominent, and the other notes are just helping all those things continue to move. So thanks for checking out this week's Flip of the Week. Next time we'll do some more musical studies and fun stuff.